kids who are struggling. So many kids. Systems are just kind of taxed out.
In the last 2 years, as compared to my last 7 years since I started teaching and working with youth, I have noticed an increase in students struggling with mental health related issues.
Every day there's someone who comes in the door who carries something with them.
I feel like if I don't try hard enough, people won't like me.
You think everyone's looking at you, it's really no one's looking at each other.
And people want to get well educated on it and help others too.
Generally, students seem exhausted.
Not seeing your friends for 2-3 years, or average, not seeing them in an average way for 2 or 3 years.
Also measure kids up to standards all the time. And I think that causes a lot of stress.
There's a whole bunch of people all trying to keep their heads above water right now, and the real question is, where's the life raft?
Sometimes we just focus on this one way of being instead of really showing kids a diverse array of all the different ways that you could be who you are.
Middle school can also be a time where your parents are like, you have to get good grades or you won't go to college, but it's 6 years away. It's still a looming thought in the back of your brain sometimes.
There's always been the sort of teen drama around this age of, navigating changing friendship dynamics and starting to have romantic relationships, and those things always had a level of drama.
Not to mention social drama and friend groups and cliques.
Social tension is even worse when you have social media, honestly, because it's really hard to communicate tone through things, and it's also really easy to say something that maybe you wouldn't have said in person, and it's also really easy for people to be brought in to create more and more drama where you just reshare something.
All of them.
Instagram, every one of them. Snap, Instagram, and TikTok.
Currently, I think I'm on Twitter and Instagram.
Discord and TikTok.
Snapchat, Instagram, Discord.
Facebook.
All of the people I know that are struggling with mental health have every social media app that you could possibly have.
Not too much in this school, I think. I think in the small school, everyone's pretty connected, and so it doesn't matter too much.
No.
My parents are kind of very opposed to social media and stuff. It's really not been stressful.
Yeah.
No. Yes.
No.
In this school, I think popularity isn't really a problem.
Sometimes I feel like if I don't try hard enough, people won't like me.
I don't have social media, so not really.
In a small school, everybody's just kind of friends and know each other, but also I'm not on social media.
Yeah, sometimes.
Popularity is it's kind of an interesting concept when it is such a small school. In such a small school, I think it might not be so much about vertical ranking or something, and where am I in the vertical ranking. I think how comfortable am I kind of navigating out onto these different spokes. Do I feel like I fit in when I go to a different spoke? I think that's kind of more of the stress that I see.
Definitely social media is impacting the way kids perceive themselves, and then it's putting this focus on constantly comparing themselves to others.
Correlation and research about being on screens and being on social media in particular too much really does increase rates of anxiety and depression. And I think part of that is the comparing.
Comparing yourself to what you see on Instagram, getting likes, not getting likes, feeling inadequate, thinking you have to attain a certain ideal image.
Pressure on social media with body image dysmorphia, and then pressure to be perfect and always appear perfect in your posts. So I think those are kind of the three things that I see kids struggling with mentally at this age.
If you're in fifth grade and you go home from school one day and you don't go back for a year, that's really disruptive to your life.
The pandemic is huge. I think kids are a lot more disconnected from people and peers than they ever have been.
It was just different during quarantine because I didn't see my friends and interact with my friends as much as I used to.
Yeah, I think COVID was really stressful, because although kids, I think, draw some stress from socialness, I think COVID really hit a lot of kids hard because they couldn't see their friends, and even though there is pressure in friend groups, not getting to interact with other kids was stressful for a lot of kids.
Like, not seeing your friends for like 2-3 years, or like average, not seeing them in an average way for 2 or 3 years, I think it didn't help with development at all, especially in our age group.
So I think COVID really exacerbated a lot of the problems with mental health because often being at school was this sort of stabilizing presence in kids' lives. It was routine, it was structure, and also a lot of unhealthy habits get checked when kids are coming to school.
And the fact that the pandemic is still going kind of stresses a lot of kids out, I think. You don't know when it's going to end, and you don't know when things are really going to go back to normal.
There was such a long time. We had to stay in our houses and do everything only on screen. Sometimes I think we forget that was a long time, and that had a huge impact on people feeling isolated, stuck in their homes. Not all homes are safe either. So I think a lot of young people are stuck in unhealthy, sometimes even abusive situations.
Opioid crisis and, just kids who are struggling with mental health, also having parents who are struggling with mental health affects the kid in a lot of ways. And so, we definitely have kids here who have parents who are in active addiction or have lost a family member through, substance use.
Did not have the internet the way we have it now, that it's, part of a teenager's daily life, and the intrusiveness of the internet that you can't escape. If you're being bullied at school, way back when it would stay at school, now it follows a person home.
2007 is when smartphones came out, and I think there's a lot of research about classes of students after 2007 who got smartphones and how much that has changed the way students think and act and behave.
Kids have been asked to step up and become either their own sort of childcare or provide childcare for younger siblings.
I think I'm seeing less resilience now, having a year and a half, 2 years of it's okay, we're gonna take it easy on you, has kind of lowered the bar, lowered kids' ability to be no, life is stressful. There's everyone in the world is stressed right now, and what are we gonna do to deal with that?
We have a really hard rental market, and so that not knowing whether you'll be able to stay at the same school because you might have to move because you can't afford your apartment.
A lot of my clients are LGBT, so gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and see that those teens in particular have an added challenge of dealing with discrimination and just the stress of trying to be themselves, and their families and other people aren't always supportive of them being themselves. So that's even harder. Those rates of mental health challenges are even higher in that community.
Living in a world where, because of social media and because of technology, young people are growing up super aware of a lot of huge, weighty issues like climate change and racial injustice and, all of these things that are this sort of underlying constant stress that I think it can feed into this hopelessness and sort of despair.
When I started teaching, we didn't have school shootings. Now we do. There's a sense of uncertainty when you go into a school. You hear and see things on the news, and that triggers a lot of anxiety.
Things that are really grounding are less and less part of daily life. Even doing basic chores or having time where you're not on screens. I think a lot of those things that can kind of restabilize one's mind are not as present in daily life because our lives have become so automated and so digital.
When their basic needs aren't met, environment, they're not always available to learn. And if they haven't had time to practice some of the skills, they can feel like they're being asked to do a lot of things that aren't things that they can do or that they feel capable of.
In certain classes.
Yes.
Depends on what class.
I don't think there's too much homework. I think it's just like very overwhelming.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Overall, no.
Not usually in most classes.
Yes, in some classes.
They have a lot of schoolwork and they're balancing out with like sports or anything, and they have a lot of pressure on them to like do well in school but also like do well in the sport, then I think that could really mess up their mentality.
A lot of times kids will say that they're stressed because of homework, like trying to pay attention all day and then going home and spending more hours kind of doing work.
Like, I think just the idea of like completing work to complete work, I think is something that kids find stressful.
Yes. It can be, especially when a big project's due in parts and you have to have parts due.
Absolutely. Yes, very. There's times when I'll go home and cry about it.
Yes. Not usually, but sometimes big projects are.
At times.
Kind of.
Yes.
It can be stressful, especially when we have like a big project in a too short period of time.
I think the main things I see kids worrying about at school would be schoolwork.
Thinking or what age you are, how your grades will impact where you get into college.
Students are particularly stressed when there becomes this snowball effect of other kids like venting a lot about how this is a huge stressful thing. I think there's that piece.
Some are just stressed by assignments, others are stressed by big projects. Technology, math, just in general, for a lot of kids can just be stressful, or like any kind of writing.
I think that one of the things that is stressful for everyone is having sustained effort.
I can't even imagine that you would feel academic pressure.
So I think that we're always going to feel a couple steps behind, but I think that as long as we are making intentional and thoughtful changes, we are going to be closer to where we want to be.
Teachers have less capacity, right, overall, because we're doing so much. And I think that, you know, there's a whole bunch of people all trying to keep their heads above water right now. And the real question is, you know, where's the life raft? Because as I see kids doing, you can't be the life raft for a friend who's struggling if you're struggling.
I don't know, be there for their kid, like check up on them. Like if they seem off, just ask them what's up. And spend time as a family. Make time for your kid.
Giving kids a chance to make mistakes and try again and like be lighthearted about it can really help in school too.
You have to be willing to take the time to sit down and spend time with your kids and create openings for them, because they're not going to always come up to you and talk to you.
I think just being really honest with kids.
And it's important to kind of like look for the people who are doing good things right now, because there's so much that's not great.
I would tell them that we can reduce the workload, that we can accommodate that student, that their mental health is much more important than the schoolwork, and that should be their first priority. And I would, if I had to, I would excuse them from the work.
It might sound silly, but just like a walk outside in the fresh air in the woods, even in winter, bundling up, you know, taking a quick walk around the block or just getting out in nature, like can really, really help.
Take them like to do something fun, just like preoccupy them a bit, so like they like have something else to do that isn't like preoccupied on like doing their grades.
Learning about the social emotional health of their students. Within reason and as appropriate, but really coming to an understanding that kids have a lot of stressors and they might need to return to some of the back to basics things before kids can feel okay enough to be able to take risks in the classroom or be able to engage in their work.
Exhibit grace, I think, and go a little easier on the kids. Have different expectations. Everyone's been through a very life-altering experience, so we're not where we would typically be. Kids lost almost 2 years of their regular education, so I think teachers should recognize that, and a lot do. Some still set the bar really high, and I like to set the bar high, but I also like to be realistic as to what kids are going through.
Adults can help kids by asking questions and supporting kids and kind of figuring out what actually works for them, because there is no one solution.
Talking to kids about just being happy with who they are and trying not to constantly compare themselves to a standard or to somebody else, but just talk more about people's strengths and uniqueness.
And don't compare yourself to other people because you're enough.
I think as a parent, reading up on some resources, I think is always really helpful, like staying kind of current on what's going on and talking to other parents.
Just to try to gather as much information as the student is willing to share.
It's really important for teachers and counselors and everybody to start taking care of themselves and doing what they can for the kids in their classroom.
I think it's really easy to become hyper-focused on one's personal experience, and sometimes it's helpful to take a step back and put things in context.
Help make sure their basic needs are met, that they're feeling comfortable in their learning environment, they're feeling emotionally safe.
You know, like a lot of times, like adults will just kind of be like, oh yeah, you're just feeling not good right now, but you'll be fine tomorrow, when really you should just kind of like take that into account and be like, oh okay, like this person might need a little extra help.
So what can kids do? Ask for help, support their friends, know it's okay to ask for help, and just keep advocating for themselves.
I think it's going to take a collective response. Not just counselors, not just teachers, but a lot of people stepping up to the plate and try to help kids adjust and recover from the pandemic.
And it's scary sometimes to tell someone how you're feeling or what's going on, but it's worth it. That's how you get help. There's nothing wrong with you. You know, this is just a hard time of life to be, especially to be a teenager.